So you can throw that over to your left. You have to look where you're throwing. Keep your eyes forward and follow through with your hand like this. Those images are of my grandfather, Yonezo. I'm the kid in that one. Thanks for being here. This is a place I made as a way of thinking about my grandfather, my family, and our stories. This is my dad. When I spoke to him, he said this.
Well, you knew Grandpa, like he was so present by his lack of presence.
It's true. My grandfather was the quietest man I've ever known. He never spoke about his past or his life in Japan before he came to Canada, and he never spoke Japanese to me. I was young, but it almost felt like being Japanese was something to be kept quiet. He was 18 when he came to Canada. Of course, when I think about going to Japan, I think about taking an airplane. When my grandfather left home as a boy, it was 1935 and he traveled by ship. It would have taken weeks.
Randy, I think that he was 15.
No, he was 18 when he came here.
No, like he was 15.
Are you sure?
I would bet my life on it, but it is getting so short now it's not even worth that.
But why did he leave?
He left because he had an older brother that had visited out here, and he was telling him about how great it was. And so Dad, being the adventurous person that he was, decided to come out.
It was the 1930s. What did a house in Hiroshima look like? Like this? I know he had siblings, brothers, and a sister named Humiko. He was introduced to a Japanese family in Canada, and he wrote them. I wonder how he felt exchanging letters with people so far away, in a place he could only imagine. Eventually, from across the ocean, he received an invitation to start a new life. What did they learn about each other? My grandmother, born in British Columbia, was the eldest in a family of girls. What do you take with you when you leave on an adventure? How did it feel to leave the only home he knew for a place he could only imagine? It was different to leave home in those days. Did they even know if they would meet again? What did they say to each other as he left? What did he hope for, this young man? What did he think his future would look like? It would have been in a place not so far from here. I wonder what it looked like the moment they first saw each other. Careful, just take a step back. This place is an act of imagination. It's an idea. Do all places start like this? Here's yours. A home begins as a story we tell each other, a shared hope.
I think they were clearing the strawberry land at the time, because I can remember them talking of dynamiting out tree stumps to get rid of the stumps to clear the land for the strawberry fields and all that.
Why do you try to capture moments, to stop time, when we're happy, proud, together? What was it like to build a home for your family with your own hands? How did it feel to grow crops and build a business? To have your hopes and dreams come true? A war had begun. It started with registration, curfews, and surveillance. They were told it was for their own safety. The vehicles were taken away. And then they were told they had to pack only what they could carry.
We were moved primarily because we were Japanese. Really for no other reason.
Weren't they allowed to take?
Cameras, radios,
Why weren't they allowed?
by government regulations, I would think. Precautionary measures of spying and that sort of,
Do you think that that was a real danger?
never in my wildest dreams. I mean, people come here for a good life. They hope for a better life, and they were well on their way, trying to do that through hard work and everything else.
The family was separated, and they were taken to different internment camps. I get lost at this point sometimes. I don't know how to show this moment. Images of the camps were controlled, and my grandfather refused to talk about what happened. I'm trying to find a way to see him here, to stand with him. Because most didn't. Most were able to look away. Who gets to tell us where to stand? On one side of a line or another? Whose safety gets to be more important than another? Whose fear gets to separate families? Eventually, my grandfather was told that if he agreed to go to Alberta and work under supervision, that he could reunite with his family. There were no reports of threats or wrongdoing. There were no crimes or acts of subversion. 22,000 people were removed from their homes. They went peacefully, trusting that they would be treated fairly.
Humans being humans, there are some that believe their workers should have something reasonable to live in. Others treat them like it's forced labor, and they're lucky to have a roof over their head, so they would be the equivalent of glorified, fixed-up chicken coops. I can remember when we were staying in, we would hear the coyotes howling outside, and I can look through the knotholes in the siding to see them if the moon was shining right.
He worked for someone else on land that he did not own. He was not allowed to possess vehicles, newspapers, radios, cameras, or to gather in groups with people who looked like him. Eventually, he wrote letters, trying to learn about his situation. I have only the responses. They came from many, from government employees and departments created to respond, to delay, to erase. 1st January, 1943. Department of the Secretary of State, Office of the Custodian, Japanese Evacuation Section. 12th May, 1944. Request for funds held to your credit at this office has been forwarded through the Department of Labor. We've now had a recheck of your chattels. We take this opportunity to herewith a revised list which we trust you will find satisfactory. 28th December. No revenue accrued to your credit at this office in view of the fact. Kindly sign and return one copy to us. 17th of November. Your house and farm have now been vacated by the previous tenant and are going to be rented to a Mr. H. belongings is as signed by you. It will be necessary for you to pay the freight on this, and you should indicate your willingness to do so in your application to the Security Commission. Yours truly, H. F. Green, Manager, Protection Department. Eventually, after years, it must have become clear. The possessions, the heirlooms, the house and the land had been sold without their knowledge or consent, for money they would never see. He would never be able to go home. And then, later, he received news from further away. Eventually, he learned that his sister had passed away when the bomb was dropped on Hiroshima. How do you begin to imagine a whole life? My grandfather never spoke to me about his past. He never spoke to us in Japanese. I know that without a home to return to, he stayed and he worked. Eventually, he scraped together enough to buy a small house in Alberta. My father grew up in that house, watching my grandparents work 7 days a week to provide for him. And in turn, my father worked just as hard to create a better life for me. My father's never been to Japan. When my father built a home for his family, my grandfather was there to help him. My grandpa was a big presence in my life. We'd fish, camp, play games, and he'd talk about the weather the way only a farmer can. I didn't know about what happened to him during the war until I was already in high school. And when I asked him about being forced to sleep in cattle cars separated from his family, he refused to talk about it, only smiling and saying, "You can get used to anything." After school, I saved enough for a ticket and I flew to Japan. And while I was living there, the great hero of my life passed away.おじいちゃんの生まれた場所を訪れました。美しい場所でした。あなたが旅に出たことを感謝しています。おじいちゃんのおかげで私は美しい世界を見ることができました。おじいちゃんの願いがこんなに遠くまで届いてるが見えますか？
Okay. Okay, go to the next one. That looks like that. How old would he have been there?
I don't know, pretty young, huh?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's
That's funny, as I'm looking at this, I say to myself, yeah, I wish I had talked to him more just to,
Yeah.